And welcome to Trip to the Mound. We are the iBaseballChannel podcast. Roy Giovanoni joined as always by Mike Lacoste. So again, we did give you guys a little bit of heads up as to where we were going with today's episode. Last week we spent a little time talking about the National League MVP. Today it's time for us to forecast and look forward to who's going to take the AL MVP award. And so, again, you gave me your guidelines over the weekend, a couple of guys that we wanted to look at and see, and we got some numbers behind them as well. So, any thoughts that you have before we get into this discussion?
Well, admittedly, I was a little bit kind of on the bubble with a few guys, but over the last couple of days, I was able to see some parts of games and highlights, and so I was kind of helped me make my decision by the time you got here this morning.
Yeah, gotcha. And so again, what we did is we picked about 4 guys that are worthy of the discussion. Again, it's a little different than the National League, whereas it looks like there is a front runner going on in the NL right now. In the AL, there's 3 or 4 guys that are all worthy of it, and we're going to break it down and see which one you feel is the most worthy, when it's all said and done. And of course, where we're going to start with is down in Los Angeles, because he's been known and he's been talked about as the front runner for most of the season. That's Mike Trout of the Angels.
That's right. And he's talked about as being the one of the best players in the game as well. So
correct. Yeah.
You would think that would kind of go along with it. And he may do it. Just he may get it. We've got 3 weeks left, and a lot of these guys are really dialed in, and some of them are on a little bit of a decline. So it's kind of it's going to be kind of tricky.
Yeah, and again, with Trout, one of those guys, but there was a number within Trout's stat line that gave you a moment of a kind of pause for concern.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things. His average is coming down a little bit. He was over right at 300. He's down at 285 now, but he struck out 160 times, and that was kind of a wake up or a little. I didn't realize he'd struck out that many times until I think I heard it 2-3 days ago. Whenever it was, but yeah.
And again, this is 160 times to this point in the season with still another 3 weeks or so left to go. And what it did is when you brought that up, what it made me do is go back and look at who were this is obviously a rare thing to have an MVP candidate with such a high strikeout total. And so I went back and found a couple of examples of guys within the last 20 years or so that have had this type of totals with the high strikeouts, but what comes back to is high run production. For example, looking at Jose Canseco in 88, the 40-40 year. Again, 42 homers, 124 ribbies, 347 total bases, but 128 strikeouts. Another season that we're looking at is Sammy Sosa in 98, which again was at the height of what was going on with his career. 66 homers, 158 ribbies, 397 total bases, but he struck out 171 times. And again, this led the league at that point. And then going back even further, and this was an interesting thing because I think one of the things that you've heard early on in his point in this career with Mike Trout is this comparison to great center fielders of a guy like Mickey Mantle. And again, you are right in that sense to where Mickey Mantle was one of those guys that led the league in strikeouts back when he was doing, but also had an amazing amount of run scoring potential. Now, again, obviously this is something that gave you a point for concern, but what is it about the high strikeout total that you don't like?
Oh, I don't know. It's just, I just wasn't aware of it. I just completely threw me off. I had no clue that in referring to Trout that he had struck out that many times. Another name comes up is, I would imagine would be somebody like Reggie Jackson that I believe struck out quite a bit, but very notable Hall of Fame type hitter. But anyway, Trout, he's going to be in the running. Don't get me wrong, but he has some guys hitting around him that help him out, so he can kind of go for the downs a lot of times. And that's probably where the strikeouts come from. If you make the mistake of pitching to him, I think that's where he really hurts people. He's willing to go outside of the zone a little bit if you can get it out there.
Well, and again, another guy that we're looking at in this discussion, and again, he's a perennial 2-time winner. I mean, he's a guy that's been repeating, and he might be doing some of his most incredible work in what's considered an offseason, and that's Miguel Cabrera. Again, you're looking at 310, 22 homers, 100 RBIs, 519 in the slugging percentage. But again, the most amazing part of this, he's doing it all on one leg.
He's hobbling around there, and he's been doing it for a month now or so, or I don't know how long, but he's an amazing guy, and that he has the ability to get the bat on the ball, but he's He's not trying to, do anything real special. He just pitches down and in. He hits a line drive 2-iron right out of there, and you see him go, opposite field. He'll inside out a ball. He's just a real top-notch, professional hitter. He can get the bat on the ball when he can smell RBIs. It seems like. So of course, if Detroit bounces back and comes back in there and gets into the pennant thing again, I'm sure they're gonna push for him because he's with the Detroit situation, and it means a lot to the city and the organization and so forth.
Yeah, and again, talking about this playing through the injury, Detroit they did do like the A's did this year, where they kind of went all in.
Yeah.
They went all in to win this year, and I think that if you saw them in a point where they weren't in such a heated race this year, he may have shut it down. But again, knowing his importance to the team, I mean, you see him playing through it. You see the endless number of amazing things that he does on one foot, whether it's throwing the ball, fielding the ball, hitting it, where you see he's taking pressure off of that back right ankle and stuff like that. And then, of course, he's also getting a big boost this year offensively, just as you talked about Trout and his Angels teammates. Victor Martinez is having a career year this year. So that may be one of the things that discount a couple of votes away from Cabrera when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and aside from Pujols, probably the best supporting act out there.
Yes, yeah. But again, being a designated hitter is not one of those guys that you would probably bring into the
not right now.
into the MVP discussion.
Not what we got out there.
Yeah. Now, and again, there was another person that, as you were having me do a little research this weekend on looking up the numbers of potential MVP candidates, there was an unexpected name. It wasn't one that I was expecting to go looking at, but upon further review, he's definitely somebody that's worthy of the race, and that's Greg Holland, the closer of the Kansas City Royals.
You definitely have to take a look at a guy like that because of the Royals and what they're accomplishing this year and how they did it. And they did it by having a 1-2-3 kind of a lights-out bullpen. And this guy's at the back end of it.
Yes.
And I think he's got some huge numbers he's compiling. And so you can look back. I look back, and there's been a few times where the relievers has gotten in there, But
yeah,
I think a little bit different circumstances, but you know all the numbers. So.
Well, and again, a couple other times the relievers have notably won the MVP award. Raleigh Fingers in 1981, 6-3, 1.04 ERA, and 28 saves. Now, again, the 28 saves is not a big number, but relatively speaking, back then, the amount of saves a pitcher had wasn't at the same level it was. Mm-hmm. Another instance that we can look at is 92 with Dennis Eckersley, 7-1, 1.91 ERA. 51 saves, and again, this is where it really stands out, 80 innings pitched and 93 strikeouts to boot.
Yeah.
Where this differs from where Holland is to this point, again, Greg Holland, 1.60 ERA, he's had 42 saves and 44 opportunities, but at this point, only 56 and a third innings pitched, but he's got 80 strikeouts to boot with it. So not as many innings pitched as Eckersley, but dominating within that time.
Yeah, because back in our day, I'm saying the Eck day, which was part of my day, the relievers would give you 5 outs or 6 outs or even more. Sometimes, you come in there in the 7th. And that's why I think they looked at him. I believe the closer for the Detroit Tigers, 84, was Willie Hernandez.
Correct.
See, Roy?
Another one. That's right. That's another
must
one.
Must be the apple juice kicking in, and the very important iBaseballChannel cue cards are really helped me out, I think he did that because it was the importance at the time of him, coming out and doing what he did for that club.
And obviously, we've talked about it throughout the season, but the resurgence of the Kansas City Royals is one of those things that's one of the bigger headlines of the season. Mm-hmm. So they may take into account, again, Holland has a great importance to the overall success of the team. But then as we looked even deeper into the numbers, it wasn't just him that stood out amongst the bullpen. He's got a couple of good setup guys, notably Kelvin Herrera and Wade Davis, who are both guys rocking that 1 ERA, a lot of appearances. And so...
Yeah, the Kansas City bullpen, I guess, has just been lights out. 1, 2, from the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, it's just almost automatic.
Yeah.
And so that helps, when you have that support around you like that, that helps. So that might maybe kind of take away a little bit from his him getting any votes.
Yeah, and so again, of the three of the four guys we've looked at to this point, we can see positives in each of them. We can see that there's reasons to vote for each guy, and then there's also that moment that gives you a reason to step back and think maybe not. And so again, candidate number 4 that we're talking about on another first place team that's had a great resurgence this year, Baltimore Orioles, and we're looking at left fielder Nelson Cruz.
Nelson Cruz is going to get I don't know if he's going to get the comeback player of the year, but he's my candidate for the MVP.
And again, just when you look at some of his numbers, 262, the average is not quite as high, but you're looking at 39 homers, 101 ribbies, 532 slugging percentage. And it really, that's not just the story in itself, because you're looking at some of his Baltimore teammates, guys like Chris Davis, that are not having the seasons that they were prior to that. And so he really has put the team on his shoulders and carried them for a great point of the season.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. He put on a performance the other night that was spectacular. He hits 2 balls out of the ballpark. He gets committed. Looks like he's going to be out front on a breaking ball, and he stops in the middle of his swing and then gets it going again and kind of inside out and flicks a line drive down the right field line, drives in some runs, and I think he single-handedly beat whoever they were playing. Was it night before last? But man, he's been on a real tear, this guy. He doesn't have the average. The average is not going to be a factor. It's what he's doing for that team. The Orioles had to beat the Yankees, and the Red Sox. That's a lot of emphasis on that National League East like that, and being able to get out there and win it, which I think they are going to win it unless they totally collapse. But
yeah.
They look pretty tough.
Well, and you could also argue that one of the best things that happened to him in the offseason was that he was one of these guys that, as spring training was coming to a close, he was still a man without a team. I mean, he was a guy that, because of the press that happened, he was kept kind of in his own little special section where teams weren't paying attention to him.
A lot of teams passed him up.
Oh yeah,
a lot of teams passed him up just because of all the enigma with all that stuff, and you got to give those guys credit. They probably, I would bet just about anything that management, at some point in time, right before they pulled the trigger, they asked Buck, "Hey, Buck, what do you think about, Nelly Cruz?" And he's probably said, "Are you kidding me? Let me have him," and they got him.
Yeah.
And now they're going to win it.
Yeah.
So tip the old cap to the Orioles right there, big time.
Yeah. So again, barring any major swings in productivity, what you're saying to this point is that Nelson Cruz is your 2014 AL MVP. Is that correct?
That's who I'm going to go with until I change my mind.
Yeah. No.
But no, I would say if he keeps going, without a doubt.
Good stuff. So again, we are Trip to the Mound, the iBaseball Channel podcast. Roy Giovanoni, joined as always by Mike Lacoste. We, of course, invite you guys to check out our wealth of material at www.ibaseballchannel.com. Of course, we've got a special announcement coming later on this week where you guys will be seeing very soon the brand new iBaseball Channel.
We keep saying it, but
yes.
Hopefully it's within hours,
Yes.
less than 100 hours.
Yes.
We're down into double digits on hours now.
Yeah. So again, we're keeping you guys up to speed on that, but there's a lot of exciting stuff that will be happening with that unveiling. So we look forward to sharing that with you guys in the meantime. Of course, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and wherever you may see the iBaseball Channel van out and about. So again, we are Trip to the Mound, the iBaseball Channel podcast. You guys have a great one out there, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon, folks.
iBaseball to you.
Absolutely.